B12 deficiency, the hidden cause, it starts quietly. A tiredness that sleep doesn't fix, pins and needles in your hands or feet, a little forgetful, a little low, a little off balance. And almost everyone has an explanation. You're stressed, you're busy, you're just getting older. But sometimes underneath all of that sits a single, fixable cause that gets missed for years, a quiet shortage of vitamin B12. It's one of the most common deficiencies in the world. In fact, low blood levels of B12 have been reported in close to half of adults in some large Indian studies. So today, let's make the hidden cause visible. So what does B12 actually do? Think of it as a quiet workhorse with three big jobs. It helps build your red blood cells, the ones that carry oxygen. It helps insulate your nerves like the coating on an electrical wire. And it helps run your brain, your memory, your mood, your focus. Here's the catch: your body cannot make B12. You can only get it from food, and almost only from animal foods: meat, fish, eggs, and dairy. Plants don't naturally provide reliable amounts of it, which is the first clue to why this deficiency hides where it does. And the reason it stays hidden is that the early signs are so vague and so easily blamed on something else. Constant fatigue and weakness. Tingling or numbness, often starting in the feet or hands. Balance that feels slightly off. Some people notice they stumble more in dim light when they can't rely on their eyes to steady them. Brain fog, forgetfulness, trouble concentrating. Low mood. A sore, smooth tongue or mouth ulcers that keep coming back. Each one on its own has a dozen possible explanations, so B12 rarely gets the blame. And because your body stores B12 for years, the shortage creeps in slowly, sign by sign, until it's easy to believe this is simply how you are now. Now here's the part that makes catching it early really matter. Most people picture B12 deficiency as just a kind of anemia, a problem with the blood. But B12 also protects your nerves, and the nerve damage can begin even when your blood count still looks completely normal. Left too long, that nerve damage, the numbness, the unsteadiness, can stop being something you fully recover from. The blood usually bounces back within weeks of treatment. The nerves recover more slowly and sometimes not completely, which is exactly why this is a hidden cause worth finding early, not late. So why do people run low? There are really two routes. The first is simple: not enough coming in, which is mostly about diet. The second is trickier: enough going in but not enough getting absorbed, because absorbing B12 is a surprisingly delicate chain. Your stomach acid frees it from food. A special protein your stomach makes, called intrinsic factor, has to grab onto it, and only then can it be absorbed in the last part of your small intestine. Break any link in that chain, and B12 slips away. That's what happens in an autoimmune condition called pernicious anemia, where the body stops making intrinsic factor. It's also why older adults who make less stomach acid are at higher risk, and why a few common medicines quietly raise the risk too. And there's a newer cause seen mostly in younger adults. Repeated exposure to nitrous oxide, including recreational use, can switch B12 off inside the body and trigger severe deficiency. And this is where it gets personal in India, because B12 comes almost entirely from animal foods. A largely vegetarian diet is the single biggest reason this deficiency is so common here. In large Indian studies, low B12 shows up in roughly half of adults, and even more often among lifelong vegetarians, though importantly many of those are low numbers on a blood test rather than full-blown illness. Dairy helps. Regular milk, curd, and paneer give lacto-vegetarians some B12, which is why strict vegans are at the highest risk of all. And there's a modern twist. Metformin, one of the most common diabetes medicines in India, gradually lowers B12 over years of use, especially at higher doses. So for many of us, the risk comes from two directions at once. There's also one quiet trap worth knowing about. B12 and another vitamin, folate, work closely together to build your blood. Here's the catch: if someone is taking folic acid supplements or eating foods fortified with it, that extra folate can keep the blood looking normal, even fix the anemia, while a B12 shortage keeps quietly damaging the nerves underneath. So a blood count alone can look reassuring while the real problem hides. It doesn't happen to everyone, but when it does, the danger isn't your blood, it's the nerve damage that report never shows. So how do you actually find it? The usual first step is a simple blood test for B12, but that number has a famous blind spot. A clearly low level confirms it. A clearly high level is reassuring. But a big middle zone, a borderline result, can't settle the question on its own, and a normal-looking number doesn't completely rule it out, especially when nerves are involved. That's where two more markers can help, with the short names MMA and homocysteine. When B12 is genuinely too low inside your cells, these two rise. Now, most people never need these extra tests. They're mainly useful when the answer isn't clear. So if your level is borderline or your symptoms fit, that's the conversation to have. Don't settle it on one number alone. So who should actually think about getting checked? Anyone whose diet is largely vegetarian, and especially vegans. Anyone over 60. Anyone on metformin for diabetes or on long-term acid-reducing medicines for reflux. Anyone who's had stomach or intestinal surgery or a gut condition like Crohn's. Anyone with an autoimmune condition, an autoimmune thyroid problem in particular, tends to travel with this. Women who are pregnant or breastfeeding, where it matters for the baby too. Because infants of mothers who are low can be especially vulnerable. And anyone with that unexplained mix, the tiredness, the tingling, the fog, that nobody's quite been able to explain. If 2 or 3 of these sound like you, your B12 is worth a look. And this is why it really doesn't need to land as fear. No fear, just the why. Of all the things that can quietly drain your energy and fog your mind, B12 deficiency is one of the most findable and one of the most fixable. It's a simple test and usually a simple treatment. A low result isn't bad news. It's one of the most satisfying answers in all of medicine because it points to something you can actually put right. Finding it is the good news, not the bad. So how is it fixed? More simply than most people expect. For many, B12 tablets at a high dose are enough, and surprisingly, a high dose works for many people even when absorption is part of the problem because a small fraction gets through anyway. For more serious cases, strong nerve symptoms, severe gut disease, or pernicious anemia, doctors usually start with B12 injections to refill the stores quickly, then settle into a maintenance routine. The blood typically recovers within a few weeks. The nerves take longer, and that's the part that rewards starting early. And reassuringly, B12 itself is very safe. It's water-soluble, so your body simply passes what it doesn't need. How long you stay on it depends on the cause. On the food side, the richest natural sources are animal foods: eggs, milk, curd, paneer, fish, and meat. If you eat those regularly, you're usually covered. If you're vegetarian, leaning on dairy and eggs genuinely helps. And if you're vegan, over 60, or in any of those higher risk groups, the honest answer is that food alone often isn't enough. The reliable fixes are simple. Fortified foods like many breakfast cereals and fortified plant milks, or a cheap, everyday B12 supplement. This isn't about fearing your plate, it's about knowing where a gap can open up and closing it on purpose. A few honest, practical notes. Don't let a slow, vague tiredness, especially with any tingling, numbness, or fog, get written off for years. If that's you, and particularly if you're vegetarian, older, or on metformin, ask your doctor 2 simple things. Should we check my B12? And if it's borderline, can we check MMA and homocysteine too? And if it is low, the next question matters just as much. Why? So it's treated at the root, not just topped up. One practical tip. If you can, have that blood test before starting supplements, because once treatment begins, the numbers get harder to read. That's not a reason to avoid B12 if you need it, just a reason to test first when it's easy to. So the one move that matters. You cannot always feel a B12 shortage for what it is, so if the signs fit or you're in a higher risk group, don't guess. Get it checked and find the cause. Want it all on a single page: the hidden signs, who's most at risk, the foods that carry B12, and the exact tests to ask for. Comment the word honest, and we'll send you the free B12 cheat sheet. If this helped a vague, frustrating set of symptoms finally make sense and feel fixable, subscribe. That's exactly what we're here for. We make health make sense. And the exact tests to ask for, comment the word honest, and we'll send you the free B12 cheat sheet. If this helped a vague, frustrating set of symptoms finally make sense and feel fixable, subscribe. That's exactly what we're here for. We make health make sense. One note, this is general